Pedagogy, the art of teaching. That was the subject of my doctoral dissertation, where I surveyed hundreds of books and resources to find the best tools to supplement your saxophone studies. And today I want to talk about 3 books that I think every saxophonist should own. Roll the... Hi, and welcome to the Saxophone Academy. I'm Dr. Wally Wallace, and if you're interested in saxophone masterclasses and product reviews, please do subscribe. We have some very cool topics coming up in the weeks ahead. Now today we're talking about 3 saxophone books I think every saxophonist should own, and I've been teaching out of these for decades. Now all the books we're talking about today deal with the fundamentals of technique and sound production. You'll notice there are no jazz books on the list, though there are bazillions of patterns and lick books out there. The way I was taught by my mentor, Chad Eby, director of the Miles Davis Jazz Studies program, is that jazz is an oral tradition and an improvised tradition, and it's best taught through recordings, transcription, and playing with mentors. And we'll get to that in future videos. But today, there are no lick books or pattern books on the menu, and that's intentional. Now, you may wonder why there's so many floating around out there. Well, you can't really sell the oral tradition in a $25 PDF download. So through classic study of the fundamentals, you'll be in good company. Charlie Parker and Paul Desmond both studied classical etudes, and most of your favorite jazz players throughout the 20th century started on clarinet, where they did the classical tradition. So we learn the fundamentals of the instrument, learn how to become great musicians, then you can approach any genre you want. So let's dive in and talk about 3 great books that address the fundamentals of saxophone study. First up is 48 Famous Studies by Franz Wilhelm Ferling. Now, Ferling was a German oboist, but you probably could have guessed the German part by the Franz and Wilhelm. And he wrote 48 etudes for oboe or saxophone, and they're terrible. They're really difficult, they're unidiomatic, they sound bad. Even the best classical saxophonists sound terrible when playing certain passages. There's ornamentation that's really difficult to teach, and once you learn it, you hardly ever use it again. So why do we teach it? Well, I had to learn it, and you have to learn it too. My teacher learned it, his teacher learned it, and even my great-grand teacher, Marcel Muehl, no kidding, he taught out of these etudes too. It's a tradition that I'm passing on to you. You're welcome. Now, are there benefits? Yeah, big ones. Now, although some of these are fiendishly difficult, remember, what doesn't kill you makes you a better saxophonist, or at least gives you tendinitis. So it's 48 etudes laid out in a way that really makes sense. Each page has 2 etudes, starting with C major, 1 slow and 1 fast, both in the same key. Now on the following page, you have 2 etudes in the relative minor, and it cycles around the circle of fifths, covering all 12 major and minor keys. Now the slow etudes are fantastic for teaching vibrato, tone, control, dynamics, phrasing, breath support. They're really useful. They're not the most beautiful etudes I've ever played, but they're incredibly useful, and they even make that horrible ornamentation worthwhile. And the fast etudes are a great way to build technique. They're going to stretch you, they'll teach you to lighten your articulation, because you have to get them up to tempo, and they build mastery in unfamiliar keys. You notice I didn't say hard keys, I said unfamiliar keys, because it brings you through all the major and minor keys. They're really pretty great. I really recommend you take your time and practice for mastery. So if you're doing the first 2 etudes in the key of C major, take those weeks to practice your C major scale, up and down full range, which we'll talk more about in future videos, scales and intervals, and really take your time to learn it well and relaxed. There's no race. Getting done with these doesn't win you some kind of certain prize. At least I never got a prize. Take your time and don't be rushed. You're not in a race with anyone else. Now, rumor has it there's a version of these that are public domain, and you can find these on the internet for free. So go download them and get to work. Number 2, Top Tones for the Saxophone by Sigurd Rascher. Now, Rascher was another German and a pioneer of concert saxophone and saxophone pedagogy. Now, the purpose of this book was to develop a 4-octave range, And the strategy to get there is a bit thin, admittedly, in this book. And the altissimo fingerings are a bit sparse and dated. But why do I love it? Well, the exercises to build the range throughout this book are fantastic, namely the overtone exercises. They're really well thought out, they're progressive, and I practice them to this day, and I still have my students practice them. Now, I add overtone scales, which we'll talk about even more in future videos, but the exercises here are fantastic for building tone, as well as getting to the 4th octave. There's also tone studies that I've loved and used and taught for years. There's also some really great dynamics exercises. Now, Rascher's writing style is a little bit condescending and stuffy, but honestly, I find it kind of charming. And if nothing else, his writing on tone imagination and tone uniformity and color, I think are well worth the price. And speaking of price, it's only $13 on Amazon as of today, which is Tuesday, I think. Number 3 is the Saxophonist Workbook by Larry Teal. Now, Larry Teal was an American saxophonist and pedagogical legend. He taught at the University of Michigan for over 20 years, and his students went on to do great things. Several of my teachers actually studied with Larry Teal. And this book is fantastic. It's got everything you need to teach the fundamentals. It's got tone, dynamics, articulation, and an amazing description of vibrato exercises, scales and intervals, chromatic exercises. But there's a big problem. While I was making this video, I went to go look up the price, and it turns out it's out of print. Now, I've been teaching out of this book for several decades. This is probably my 3rd or 4th copy of this book, so I was a little bit crestfallen when I found out it's no longer in print. So instead of telling you how great this book is, I think it's time for a change. I think it was a good impetus to decide to create a new resource for the 21st century. So all those great things that are in there, tone, dynamics, articulation, vibrato, scales, arpeggios, scale intervals, I think those should be a free resource. So I'm committing to taking all of those, extending them to high F sharp, which that was the one missing feature in the original Teal workbook, and making it free to all the Saxophone Academy students. And we'll make that the backbone of the lessons and courses we have going forward. But I need your help. Let me know in the comments below what might be missing and what you would love to see in teaching fundamentals. What resources or strategies do you think need to be included in the backbone of whatever course we start to make? So let me know in the comments below, or any books that you love that I've forgotten about. I'm going to get to work, but in the meantime, I will see you next week with a very cool review of a $70 mouthpiece I think you're going to like. So I will see you soon, but until then, go practice.